CIA spent millions trying to prove if humans could see through walls. They weren't looking for ghosts or magic. They were hunting for a weapon. In the late 1950s, the Cold War turned every shadow into a threat. Intelligence officers feared Soviet spies could use any method to steal secrets. They needed to know if the human mind could transmit information instantly. If an agent could see a room from miles away, traditional security was useless. This wasn't just a theory. It was a massive, covert investment of resources. They began recruiting people who claimed they had special abilities. These were the individuals who could describe objects they had never seen before. Technicians built sealed rooms and placed strange items inside them. Subjects sat outside, eyes closed, trying to project their minds into those rooms. They were looking for a signal, a flicker of consciousness beyond physical limits. By 1964, the data started coming in from the remote viewing trials. Here is why this changed everything for the men in the dark suits. They weren't just getting lucky guesses or random hits. Subject A described a Soviet bunker in East Berlin with perfect accuracy. They detailed the color of the doors and the exact layout of the hallways. It wasn't just a guess. It was a blueprint for an invasion that hadn't happened yet. But then, the data started to get weird. It got statistically impossible. Researchers noticed that the subjects weren't just seeing images in their minds. They were reporting sensory details like the smell of ozone and metallic dust. They reported feeling a distinct coldness when looking at specific coordinates. It was as if they weren't imagining the room. They were physically present there. This wasn't just human imagination. It was a measurable, repeatable psychic signal. The scientists and psychics began to realize something terrifying about the human brain. If the mind could perceive these things, then the boundary of the body was fake. It suggested that consciousness doesn't stop at the skin or the skull. It implied a layer of reality where distance, walls, and even time didn't exist. This is the point where the project shifted from science to something much darker. If people could connect to this field, they could be manipulated by it. Imagine an enemy who can reach into your mind and rewrite your memories. Or a government that can broadcast thoughts directly into a crowd of millions. This was the ultimate weapon of psychological warfare. It was too powerful to share. If the public found out, the very concept of privacy would evaporate instantly. The officials realized that if this worked, they couldn't let anyone else know it worked. They didn't want a revolution in consciousness. They wanted a monopoly on power. So, they began the process of scrubbing the files from the official record. They stopped calling it remote viewing and started burying the reports under other names. Researchers who pushed too hard for publication were quietly reassigned or silenced. The papers that showed the consistency of the signal vanished into deep storage, but data has a way of leaking out when people get desperate enough to find it. Decades later, fragments of these reports began appearing in declassified archives. They describe experiments where subjects could see through lead-lined walls and thick concrete. They were reporting the exact serial numbers on machines they couldn't possibly see. Each successful trial was a crack in the wall of our perceived reality. Think about what it means for your own mind to be an antenna. If we are constantly picking up signals from this non-local field, why do we ignore it? Maybe because some people are very good at making us believe it isn't real. They want you to believe that your eyes and ears are all you have. They want the map of human potential to stay small and manageable. But the files don't lie. The data from 1964 remains consistent today. The fact that it was suppressed tells you everything about its true value. It wasn't a failed experiment. It was a success they couldn't afford to let happen. They didn't want us to know we are more than just meat and bone. They don't want you to realize that the wall between your mind and the world is thin. Every time a piece of this history surfaces, it challenges the status quo. It forces us to ask, who else is listening to these signals? And what are they doing with the information they gather from our minds? The fear isn't that we can see through walls. The fear is what happens when others see into us. They buried the research because a person who knows their own potential is hard to control. A mind that can reach out is a mind that cannot be easily caged. We are still looking for the truth in the margins of these old, dusty folders. Every page we turn is a piece of the puzzle they tried to burn. The truth isn't hidden because it's impossible. It's hidden because it's dangerous. They want you to stay inside the box they built for you. The signal is still there, humming in the background of our lives. It's a frequency that only those who look deep enough can hear. The records were scrubbed, but the results remain etched in the archives. They can hide the papers, but they cannot change the fact that it happened. The transition from observation to silence was sudden and absolute. One day it was a groundbreaking study on human consciousness. The next, it was a ghost story. They moved the files into deep storage where no one would ever have to read them. But in the digital age, ghosts are harder to keep quiet. The keywords started appearing in fringe forums and independent research circles. People began connecting the dots between the discarded MK Ultra notes and modern tech. They saw patterns that were too consistent to be accidental errors or hallucinations. If a human can perceive an object across a continent, then space is just a suggestion. And if you can feel a presence before it arrives, then time is also a suggestion. This realization makes the very foundation of our modern security systems look like child's play. How do you protect a secret from someone who doesn't need to travel to find it? They realized that if this became public knowledge, the military-industrial complex would crumble. Why build a wall when the mind can simply walk through it? Why build a lock when the intruder can see the combination from miles away? The suppression wasn't about protecting us. It was about protecting their control. They needed to keep the magic of human consciousness under their thumb. By burying the research, they ensured that the public would remain focused on physical barriers. They wanted you looking at the door, not into your own mind. But we are starting to look. We are finding the gaps in their narrative. Every time a declassified document hits the light, the veil thins just a little more. We see the signatures of the scientists who were told to keep quiet. We read the frantic notes they left about the anomalies that refused to go away. These aren't just lines of text, they are screams from the past. They are warnings that some truths are too heavy for a single institution to hold. The truth is that our reality is much more porous than we were told. Your consciousness is not an island, it's part of a vast, interconnected ocean, and there are people who want to own the tides. They tried to bury the maps to those hidden currents. They tried to burn the logs of every ship that sailed too far. But you can still find the debris on the shore if you know where to look. The suppressed lab is here to find those pieces for you. We don't care about the official story. We only care about what they tried to hide, because when you find out how much they were hiding, everything changes. You realize that the most important discoveries aren't in the textbooks. They are in the folders marked classified, sensitive, and do not distribute. The truth is waiting in those blank spaces on the map of human knowledge. It's time to start filling in the blanks. Follow the suppressed lab to see what else they hid.